Do I need to sit down?
Everybody look real serious. No, that's not Cherokee.
Do I need to sit down?
Oh, you can walk around. You can present however you want. They'll
Okay.
they'll follow you.
Okay.
Okay. Siona God. Hello, everyone again. Hello, our faithful audience from Briggs. And Sio to everyone watching online as well. It is, we're going to have a very exciting program. JP Johnson is here. He is here from Education, Cherokee Nation Education Department. He is a community outreach specialist, has been here at the Nation for 7 years, 7 being a good Cherokee number. He hails from the Rocky Mountain community, just outside of Tahlequah here. He's married to Shauna Johnson. She's a full-time student at NSU. They have 3 children, Janost, who is 7, Sonoy, who is 4, and Walel, 1.5, and they're all attending the Cherokee Language Immersion School. Stickball and its role in community has been so important. And some people say it's think of it as just a game. It's really not just a game. It's played to solve differences, historically is what it was used for, to solve differences among people. It was played as an avoidance of war and loss of life, and large numbers of loss of life, because it can be a rough game. And it's today really designed to bring people together of all ages, from the youngest child to the elder, whoever wants to play. And so it's a very special game in terms of community. And so community and cultural outreach, we're just very pleased to have JP here this evening to explain the importance of stickball. Wado.
I guess this is the part where I'm supposed to introduce myself. I've done that a lot over the years, so I guess I'll get at it. Siona Garwa, Gayale Jason, JP Dawadon, Chalak Ganti Ina Dawadon, Tahlequah Nela. I live here in Tahlequah, but my family comes from Rocky Mountain community. Some people refer to that place as Nawiskala, the Flint District area. Donnie is correct. When she first started talking, she said that she said stickball isn't just a game. And I would go even one step further with her on that and say it's a full-fledged ceremony in and of itself. All by itself, without anything else along with it, it is a ceremony, even in its most secular form. And it does have secular forms at this point. Secular, meaning less spiritual or more of a social thing. But a long time ago, they say, a long time ago, our ancestors played the ball games for several reasons, and we had more than just one version of the game. Throughout our history, so we borrowed some and taken some and left some and forgotten some and da-da-da-da-da. Some people say that the ball game was collected by the Cherokees and then spread throughout the southeast by us and perpetuated by us. A lot of people actually say that. Traditional elders in our community say that. Archaeologists and anthropologists and all those people all the ologists that studied us, they all say the same thing, that it was probably perpetuated by us. So that means, to me, at least in my heart, and I like to believe that it's our game in any form, in any way that we play it. A long time ago, when we played it in its purest form, we had basically 2 or 3 different versions of a ball game that we used, whether it be for ceremony or whether it be for things of that nature. Just they kind of were all over the place, so to speak. The first one that they say that we utilized the most, the one that we utilized to settle disputes between neighboring communities and towns and different groups of people in some cases. They called it Ane Chode. Ane Chode means to wrestle. Some people say it means to wrestle, but I just heard recently from another elder in another community, the first time I ever heard anybody, fluent speaker, tell me this, that word in and of itself, it means practicing for war. Now, we had another word that I knew that was more indicative of that ideology, I guess you'd say. It's called Usti Danawa, or Danawa Usti, some people say. That means little war, literally. That's the other word that we had for it. This version that I'm talking about is not the social game that we play at our ceremonial grounds. This is actually something that we held, I think, probably for much longer. We've picked up different ball games and stuff here and there, but this one is actually the one that our ancestors probably played in the 1500s still yet. So it was a long time ago when our ancestors were playing this version of the game, and they actually utilized it for a lot of different reasons, and it had its own ceremonial complex in and of itself. And what I mean by that is that it was separate from our regular religious ceremonies. The reason that it was separate is because it was so closely related to war. In our original ceremonies, our regular ceremonies, run-of-the-mill peace ceremonies, aka white ceremonies, whatever you want to call it, the things that we do at our ceremonial grounds still yet today are peaceful. This one was more red. It was more about that war game, about settling something. So when I tell you that our ancestors won a large portion of the state of Georgia in a ball game from the Creeks, it was a big deal. When they played it for certain reasons like that, when they were fighting over land, whenever they were fighting over water rights or something along those lines, anything, if they were arguing with people, they would use this game in order to settle things in a semi-peaceful way, because it was very, very, very much closely related to war. And then some people say that our young people could not go to war until they had learned how to play that ball game and played it well. If they weren't good ball players, then they probably didn't end up going to war whenever it was time to do so. Our ancestors, a lot of people call us the 5 civilized tribes. I really kind of hate that, to be honest with you, because it's really just a backward slap in the face. They say that because they want to say that we weren't civilized before European contact. And that's to me, at the very least, is annoying. They say, oh, well, they started to wear European clothes and they started to do this and da-da-da-da. But we always maintained what was us. We always maintained the things that was inherently within us, and those things still existed at those time periods, and they still exist now. So our ancestors may have borrowed those clothes and used wagons and built fancy houses and all of those cool things, but at our heart we were still just as Indian as everybody else. And what I mean by that is that we had kind of seasons throughout the year, right? Everybody says winter, summer, fall, all that good stuff. We had like wartime and peacetime was a season. There was like a time period where it was just like, well, it's time to go to war this year. Who are we going to war against? It was literally that much angst within our communities, I guess you'd say. But anyways, we played this ball game sometimes I digress sometimes, you're going to have to bear with me. We literally play this game sometimes just to settle things instead of going to war. So instead of having 30 or 40 people die in a battle or hundreds of people die in a war, we would play a ball game against someone. And basically what would happen is each community would first hire like a manager, like a team manager, so to speak, someone that spoke for them. And they would hire that person to come together with the other team manager, and they would then make agreements upon where they're going to play, how they're going to play, all that kind of stuff, and get that stuff lined out ahead of time. That team manager would then turn around and hire a medicine man for each community. the medicine man would start working for this team over here, and the other medicine man would start working for this team over here. And they would essentially guide our players from those communities, these men, these really strong, real tough guys. They would guide them through the ceremonial complex, the things that they need to be doing. They had taboos. They had things that they couldn't do, things that they couldn't be. They couldn't be around children. They couldn't eat certain foods like squirrels or rabbits, things that might make their bones brittle. They had to fast a lot. They had to go through all kinds of purification. They had to sit in the osi, which is like a sweat lodge. They had to do all of these things to purify themselves and seclude themselves off from their women. That meant no contact from their wives or girlfriends or any women of that nature whatsoever, not even their own family members. They had to prepare themselves for months at a time sometimes. And these medicine men would be working that medicine on their behalf and prescribing them things to do on a daily basis, things to do on a regular basis. They might scratch them and rub medicine into their wounds. It was like giving them a shot. We didn't have syringes. This got that medicine directly into their bloodstream. They did all these kinds of things to purify them all the way through, up until sometimes months in advance, all the way until it was game day. And the day of the game, the men would be gathering in their own communities after they'd had an all-night dance and they were pretty much exhausted. They would start hooping from one community to the next. Sometimes miles and miles apart, they would walk along the riverside. And when I mean by hooping is they would do it kind of loud so that the whole community, it was considered a war hoop. They considered it the same thing that you would use if you were actually in war and if you were taking somebody down, and that was the final draw. They would say something along these lines. Then all the men would answer him. And they would do it louder and louder and louder as they went along. And as they did, the community members from all these different communities and these different hollers would hear them. And they would know that that day there was a ball game. They were going to be matching up with somebody on the ball field. They would continue to do that and stop and go to water, do medicine, maybe scratch again, stop and go to water, do medicine, maybe scratch again, and continue to do that all the way until they get to what they called the center ground or the ball field. And once they got to the ball field was about the size of, roughly the size of a soccer field or a football field, somewhere along those lines. And they had saplings at each end of the field with a crossbeam across the top of them. And those men, as they marched out onto that field, they would also keep hooping, and they would go in increments. These guys would walk a few steps, and then they would hoop really loud. These guys would walk a few steps, and they would hoop really loud, and so on and so forth, and so on and so forth, until they met up in the center. This was intended to intimidate their opponents. If you hear a whole bunch of them guys doing it all at the same time, it can intimidate a lot of people. It's really it'll raise the hair on your back of your necks. But anyways, they would get all the way to that center ground, and there would be men out there that would be in charge of the ball game ceremony, so to speak, actually in the ball game, and they called them drivers. These men had large switches that were cut out of the woods, usually about 6 or 7 feet at least, if not more. Those long switches were their whistles. You know how referees, they say, "Oh, foul," blow a whistle, and then everybody stops. Well, we didn't have a whole lot of real fouls. We had basically a couple of rules. We had one, you didn't touch that ball with your hands, and that's it. And that you had to have a crossbeam across the top of the goal. That was the only rules. So you could do anything you wanted to do to get a hold of the ball. If I'm playing and you're playing and you got the ball and I want it, I'm going to take it from you any way I can get it. If I hit you with my sticks, suck it up. If I club you in the legs, if I break your leg, that takes me out of the game. So I don't want to harm you to the point that you can't play, but I sure ain't going to be nice to you. But anyway, these guys would be out on the field lined up against each other, kind of standing shoulder to shoulder with their teammates facing the other team like this. And those drivers would take those sticks and use them to move those sticks in just the right position where they're all kind of lined up. And they basically matched these guys up against players that were about the same size. The only thing that they required of each team was that they have the exact same amount of players on each side. So you could have anywhere from 12 to a couple of hundred guys on each side. 12 was the minimum. You went to 12 points, and the first one to 12 is the one who wins. If that took all day, it took all day. If it took all day and you still hadn't made it to 12, you woke up the next day and played some more. They did it until they made 12, regardless. Rain or shine, doesn't matter if it's storming on you, you're still playing. So nothing really stopped the ball game. If a person died in the ball game, they drug that body off of the field and they continued to play. It was rough stuff. And if they were settling something, then you knew they were playing for real and they were not going to mess around. Now, on the other hand, that game was also used in much in the same way that football games are, because community involvement was as much a part of it as the ceremony. The social aspect of it was as much a part of the ceremony as all of the spiritual stuff that they did up until that point. So the community members would all rally from all different communities, would all be there, and they would be gambling like nobody's business. Betting horses, betting the clothes off their backs, betting anything. Piles and piles of clothing and things that they've been handmade, ball sticks and you name it. If they could make it, baskets, whatever, it was out there. And they would gamble with that. So you had your team, your community rallying behind you, but also adding that pressure of, you better win or I'm losing out here, buddy. So you better do me right. You better play hard. So even if they weren't trying to settle something, they were still playing with as much angst and aggression and strength and agility as they would if they were playing against another tribe. This ball game for us, for Cherokees, for Oklahoma Cherokees specifically, was set aside. We set it aside around 1911. Around that time, it was the last time that we had a man-to-man ceremonial ball game here in Oklahoma. They continued to play it in North Carolina, and as they played in North Carolina, and like many traditions, as they played, that tradition changed a little bit and morphed a little bit. And so it's not exactly the way that our ancestors played it, but they had pretty close. One of the things that they started to do was as soon as they would scoop the ball up and they could get it in their hand, and they would throw their sticks down. That was really the only rule that we had a long time ago, was that you didn't grab the ball with your hand. Now, at this point, around the 1940s, somewhere around in there is when they started doing that. So they pick up that ball, throw their sticks down, and they got two hands free to fight off their opponents. And that makes for a really lively game. It makes for a lot of wrestling, a lot of laying on the ground, WWF style, holding somebody and pinning him down to the ground or whatever. They are allowed to use their sticks to throw you to the ground, to choke you, to hold you, whatever they want to do. Aside from using them as a weapon to club you with, they can do just about anything they want with their sticks. So it's very, very rough game. And so like I said, it's not exactly the same way that our ancestors played it, but it is very much our game. So down through our history, we pick things up, like I said, and we set things aside, and we gather other things up and things of that nature. During that time period when they stopped playing the ball game, the man-to-man ball game here in Oklahoma, the Cherokees anyways, they were still carrying on our ceremonies at our ceremonial grounds. At one time, we had about 26 Cherokee ceremonial grounds in eastern Oklahoma. Now, at this time, basically, we have about 6. So we've lost about 20 ceremonial grounds in 20 different places where they have a lot of ceremonial stuff going on. Our dances, our songs, our medicine, our language, all of those things are being spoken, used, utilized, and perpetuated at these places. But we only have 6 left now. So we've seen a pretty hefty decline, but when they put that man-to-man ball game away, part of the reason I believe that they put it away is because during that time period, it was not okay to be a ceremonial person. They couldn't really talk about these things. They didn't say somebody in the grocery store and say, "Hey, that was a good dance last night. We'll see you at the next one." It was a secret because things were getting outlawed. Our ceremonies were getting outlawed. Things of that nature were going underground, so to speak. So our ceremonial grounds were underground, and so they couldn't really talk about those things, much less have a big, rowdy, crazy, scary, where possibly people could die ball game. So they had to put that game aside. Some people say they did it on purpose. Some people just say it just kind of fell by the wayside and nobody did it again or something along those lines. You never know. There's no actual proof on those things sometimes. But at our ceremonial grounds, we still had a social version of the game. And that social version is a game that is probably the most common version played in Oklahoma. Not just because Cherokees play it at their ceremonial grounds, but because Creeks and other tribes play it at their ceremonial grounds as well. And it's a version where there's a single pole in the center. And that single pole has a wooden effigy of some sort on the top, whether it be a wooden ball or a wooden fish. And they play that game, men versus women. And I called it a social game because of that aspect, because it is to create that interaction between men and women, young and old. Everybody that Donnie was talking about earlier when she introduced me, everybody is allowed to play and participate in this game. And they want everyone from the youngest to the oldest out there, because that's really what this game is about. And I call it social even though it's a hefty part of the ceremony at most of our stomp grounds. Now, this is the game that they'll take a temporary pole and go somewhere and they'll set it up at a school and bring sticks and everybody will play. That's it. That's the same game, but it is a ceremonial game. And even though you go and you bring that temporary pole and you bring your sticks and you tell kids about it and get them outside and they run around and beat each other up and have fun, that's still a ceremony. Even though it's not necessarily placed in that ceremonial context. It's not done at our ceremonial grounds. It's still a ceremony. It still brings about the same emotions. It still brings about the same thing and the same medicine that's created between men and women, young and old, everybody together, all working together to do something together. That there's symbolism behind it, and it's important. So that version of the game is what existed for a long time within our ceremonial communities. Like I said, at one time there was about 26. Now there's 6. And so it died down quite a bit, not played as many places, but still yet on any given weekend you can find a ceremonial ground and or a community somewhere where they have just set up a pole and they're going to play. Then, not too long ago, probably 10 years ago, 8 or 10 years ago, somewhere around there, the Cherokee Nation made a push to pick up another version of that ball game. This one being much more like the original man-to-man ball game that we had at one time, the one that was put away, but we borrowed this version from the Mississippi Choctaws. What basically happened is they've been playing it and continuing it and perpetuating it for such a long time in their own communities that they have what they call a Stickball World Series right there in Philadelphia, Mississippi, where the Choctaws are from. and it's a big deal. And if you get a chance to check out their ball game, it's really impressive. But they play it. That's the main focus of their culture right there. That they have some social dances and things like that. But the main focus of being Choctaw, when you think of Choctaw, you should think of stickball. They play it at their holiday, their fair time, and there are community teams from all over the place that come and play, probably 15 or 20 of them. Much like you would see a softball tournament, but instead it's a stickball tournament. Anyways, so they made a film of themselves playing with lots of big hits. There ain't no pads. There ain't no little to no rules, no protective gear, nothing like that. And most of them still go barefoot. So you get clobbered out there, you get clobbered. And so they made this, they made this film, and then they sent it to us. I don't know who they sent it with, but they sent it, and they said, well, nice to meet you guys. We're the Mississippi Choctaws of Mississippi. This is our ball game, and we'd like to challenge you. And that was what they did. And so at that point in time, Cherokee Nation started learning about playing that game, going over there and learning and playing that game. And so the government entity, not the ceremonial people, but the government entity in and of itself was making a push to revive this game. Or bring this game to Oklahoma. And they did. And at this point, it's the most commonly played man-to-man game here in Oklahoma amongst Cherokees. But it did come from the Mississippi Choctaw. The subtle difference is they have decent amount of rules that go with it. Things like you should throw your sticks down before you tackle somebody. Things like no cussing on the ball field. Don't hit anybody with your sticks on purpose. So if somebody, like one year, I got caught right here. The guy just was following through as he was throwing the ball and clipped me. Those little bitty cuts, man, they bleed forever and ever. But anyways, so they have a few rules. They have referees out on the field. They have timed quarters. So it's much more like a sporting event. It's much more secular. There's a lot less ceremony involved in it. It's much more like something that you would see if you were watching a lacrosse game, except for lacrosse players actually wear pads. There ain't no pads in this game. So, yeah, you can ask questions. What's that? There are, I believe, about 8. No, their referees are not the same as Cherokee referees. Cherokee referees aren't there to stop you if you're on the ground choking somebody. They stand there and go, okay, but don't get mad. And then you get mad, then they switch you. That's what those switches are for. That's our whistle. I told you a while ago, that's our whistle. We have to use, that's how they stop them. So if you lose one to injury, do you get to replace that one? In this Choctaw version, in the game that this tournament style, let's refer to it that, tournament style stickball, yes. If a player has to come out because he broke his leg or whatever, and they do. They broke my shoulder first year out in Mississippi. You come out, if you have to come out, then they can replace you. They have a minimum of 30 guys on the field, 30 guys from each team. So you have 60 players total on the field. The goals are single poles at each end that are square in shape, and they're roughly 12 feet tall. And you have to score points by hitting it with the ball or with the ball inside of your sticks. The trouble is there's about 15 other guys that are in your way. So if you're going to run it, I hope you can run through a bunch of big boys, because the big boys are going to be the ones that are going to be standing by the goal. If you're fast and you're a good shot, then you're obviously someone that's on the offense. If you're somebody that's a little bit slower like me, but you like to throw somebody to the ground, then you're a defense guy. So they can tackle you or anything? Absolutely. Just about anything aside from clubbing you with their sticks. They can do any one of those. No touching the ball with your hand. That's the main rule. And that's more indicative of what our ancestors did. We have an old story that talks about a ball game, and it's also talking about the moon. It says that the moon is actually a ball that was thrown into the sky. Somebody cheated and grabbed the ball with their hands, and when they did, the other team was coming for them, and they went like that, flung it to the sky because they knew they weren't supposed to touch the ball with their hands, and it got stuck up there. And so that's a reminder to the rest of us that we're not supposed to touch the ball with our hands. Now, in that social game, those women, they actually get to touch the ball with their hands, but you see, there's probably a catch there of why that's the case, because they're women. They have special rights and special things that they're allowed to do that men are not allowed to do, and vice versa. So, and most people say, oh, Cherokee communities, they're all ran by women. I said, yeah, well, they are. But it's a matrilineal society, not a matriarchal society. In other words, you get your lineage from your mama, but it's not about them running the show because there's an equal balance between the two. Yeah, it's very much balanced. Just like our ceremonial dances, whenever we get out there and do a dance, man, woman, man, woman, man, woman, all the way back. That's the way it's supposed to be. That shows that balance. It shows that each of us have a role. The field is about the size, the field that they play on for the Choctaw version that they recently acquired, the tournament style, that they play on a football field. And so it's I don't know, they come out a little ways from the goals. I don't know how far out they do, but it's the football goals will be there, and then they come out a little ways from it, so that you don't have people running into those, but so the goals are a little bit away from it. Now, in Oklahoma, I mentioned a little while ago that the most commonly played game is that social game because of all the ceremonial grounds. That's also because of the creeks that are here. And our Creek brothers and sisters have ceremonial grounds that are very similar to ours. The songs and dances are very similar to ours. The ceremonies are very similar to ours. There's a lot of things that we held in common being from the Southeast, even though they were a different linguistically involved people. They were Muskogean people, speaking people, and we're Iroquoian-based language. We still have a lot in common. And they maintained their man-to-man ceremonial ball game at their ceremonial grounds. So at their stomp grounds, they still play a man-to-man game, and they still play with saplings in the ground and crossbeams across the top. And that version of the game is as close to what our ancestors did a long time ago as we could possibly get. About the only thing that they've changed is they pit one community against another, and they call it East-West. The reason they call it East-West is because they have stomp grounds come, sometimes up to 6 or 7 stomp grounds come to all to one ground. They dance all night long. The next day, each ceremonial ground divides up amongst themselves, east and west, east, west, east, west, east, west, so that fathers are playing against sons, brothers are playing against brothers, cousins against cousins, and so on and so forth. And these relatives are all lined up and matched up against each other, and they're divided up out on that field. And just because they're playing against their own family does not mean it's by any means tames it down. It's still a very rough game, and yes, they can hit each other with their sticks. It's frowned upon, but nobody says anything. What's up? When they see someone lose their temper, if you can tell when somebody's really mad or if they're really just trying to play. If they're going after the ball or if they're just on the ground choking somebody for no reason. Now, you can be holding a guy in any way, shape, or form, any way you want, but when you watch people, I got to ring my own bell a little bit. Recently, right here in Oklahoma, we had the very first ceremonial Cherokee ball game since 1911, just a weekend ago, and nobody got mad. We had people up there that didn't even belong to the same ceremonial ground with us, and still no one got mad. And I'm talking, this was rough. It was as rough as our ancestors could have played. One of the ceremonial leaders, whenever he was walking down the line and talking to us, he said, y'all, the rule is don't touch that ball with your hands. And I thought he was going to go on from there, and he stopped. He didn't say anymore. So you can tell when somebody's really mad or when they're playing a game or when they're playing. Just like in a football game, if you see a guy that's getting after somebody and he's just getting after him or grudge hitting him, just because he wants to, you can kind of spot those things. There might be a little bit blurred lines there, but for the most part, you're going to be able to tell. And those drivers are there watching that to make sure. And if they do get angry, if they do lose their tempers, then they will switch them to get them to stop in the ceremonial version. Whereas that Choctaw version so basically what I've got boiled down to is that we have the social game played with the single pole, men versus women. We have our ceremonial game that recently started back up. We have that, and we have that man-to-man game that we borrowed from the Choctaws. That's tournament style, a secular game. Now, we have a fourth game. This fourth game is actually a little bit different than all of them, in the sense that no sticks involved. They actually use a misshapen ball. It's still handmade like the ball in a stickball game, a small ball, or woven ball, or not woven, but stitched up ball, about that big, like a little bitty baseball. This one's a bigger one, and it's misshapen. And the men have soccer rules, and the women have none. They have no rules whatsoever. And they have goals at each end that are, some people bend them over and tie them together to make an arc. The Uchis, the Shawnees, the Senecas, some of these other tribes play it, but it was also a Cherokee game. And that game still exists too, in a social form and in a ceremonial form. But that version, the guys have soccer rules, and the girls, man, they can pick that ball up, and they want to hit you with the ball, they'll hit you with the ball. If they want to clothesline you, they will. They can do just about anything they want. So we have 4 games, essentially. All of them have value. I think that stickball is, in and of itself, something that can grab the hearts of our young people, and it can bring them to where they need to be. So much in life, our young people are bombarded by other people's culture, other people's traditions. They like what they see on TV, what they see in music videos. They like all of these things, and they start to forget about who they really are. They start to forget about their ceremonies.
If you were to just start to build a facility, which game would you recommend?
All of them.
All of them?
Yeah. You can play all of them. I think that at one time, I'm pretty ethnocentric. It means I don't want to say I don't like other people's stuff, but man, I like to do Cherokee dances. I could probably, I got lots of buddies that if I wanted to, I could probably learn how to do traditional straight dance at a powwow, but it ain't mine. That belongs to Native people, and there are lots of Cherokees that like it, and that's cool because it's good that you're just celebrating being Indian. But I like Cherokee stuff. I prefer Cherokee stuff, so I don't borrow a whole lot of things. If I do, it has to be really cool in order for me to borrow it. And so that Choctaw game, I like to play it a lot, but I in my heart, I want to perpetuate the things that are Cherokee first. because those are the things that in my community, in this community, in all these other communities, in our at-large communities, those are the things that are needed, is our own culture, the things that belong to us. But I believe that all of those games have that value. The social game, and they all kind of interlock and intercept with one another and interrelate with one another. That social game, I tell young men, especially with young boys, pretty young ones, around 8 or 9 years old, they're the ones that have they get so mad when girls get to throw them to the ground or tackle them or grab their sticks and pry them apart and steal the ball or whatever. They feel it's unfair, that game, and it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be unfair. But I tell those young men that this game is training. This game is training you for a lot of different things. First and foremost, it's training you how to teach women. If our young men learn to play that game and play that game well, if they end up being an NFL player, they're not going to hit a woman in an elevator. They're not. So this game teaches them to basically suck up what those girls are going to dish out. This teaches you not to get mad. So if a girl tackles you, so what? Maybe she likes you. This teaches those young men to do that. And then once they've played that game and got the hang of that and they've gotten used to the fact that somebody's going to tackle them and they can't get mad about it, then they play that other version. And then somebody tackles them then and they still don't get mad about it because they've learned self-control from that game. So those things kind of, they work together. And I believe that they're all important and they all have a spiritual, physical, and mental value that can't really be explained unless you actually do it. I do like to use our ball games whenever I teach them in the communities, whatever version I play, and I play all of them. I do like to use our language the whole time, as much as possible. So in most cases, whenever I'm presenting in a school or doing a camp or whatever, those kids hear me screaming and yelling at them in Cherokee all day, like a football coach, and they don't realize it while they're playing, but as they're playing, they realize that they're starting to learn, I know what he meant. They'll go, what did he say? But in their heads, they know what I meant, and they're starting to understand me. If I say wiki, they know that means to go get it. If I say hutagi, that means pick it up. If I say wichiduk, they know that means to throw it. So they start picking up these phrases, and that's another value that these games can teach our young people is our language. Because without it, we're not Cherokee no more. If we don't have our language, that's the one thing that makes us sovereign. That's the one thing that makes us different than everybody else.
Is there an age in the tournament play? I know the social thing.
In the tournament style, here in Oklahoma, it's really at this point just starting to take shape. It took a while. It took a while for it to catch and for people to actually start playing it, really playing it. There's actually been a community team formed. This community team is called Ani Sanoy. They are a conglomerate of people from all different communities, and they play. When they play in the tournaments, they have to be 18 because it's the real deal Holyfield. I mean, it's when they're playing, they come home with real injuries. But Cherokee Nation, for a short while, was doing small tournaments with schools. And there was an age bracket there, and they were actually allowing girls to play alongside the boys, and it was a co-ed system where the younger they were allowed to play boys and girls on each side with sticks against each other, and they had tournaments going on there. I believe that within the next couple of years, it's going to really take off, and there's going to be community teams and young people playing all over the place, whether they're playing that tournament style or coming back to their ceremonial grounds and playing that version. But for the most part, that tournament style is going to be at the forefront because it's there. I mean, it's if you go to National Holiday, they have a jump-on game where everybody goes and you sign a waiver and you can get in. And that game, parents that want to allow their kids to play, they can allow their kids to play, and they sign a waiver for them to go in. But you got to remember, there's no pads and it's full tackle, just like you'd see in a football game. So it's pretty brutal stuff to watch. But I would say within the next couple of years, there's probably going to be teenage teams being formed, young people making their own teams. In all actuality, one of these days, if I get the chance, I might start doing that on my own and forming teams and communities and things of that nature. Go in that community, teach them how to play it, get it going for a little bit, and then leave it to them to take care of.
You get to that point, check with us first.
Okay, will do. I don't know how much time I have left.
I guess you're gonna talk about sticks, but, we'll have 20 minutes.
Okay.
So here we learn how to do that.
What's that?
Make sticks, where do we learn to do that?
Where? There are a lot of people within the communities that make sticks. People that would consider professionals, people who are good at it. I can make them myself. I do know how to make sticks, but I do not consider myself a maker. I can make you a basket too, but I'm not a basket maker. I can make you some pottery, but I'm not a potter. I like to play stickball and teach people to play it, but for the most part, I'm not a stick maker. I don't consider myself one. If I did, I would be putting myself in the ranks of people like Victor Wildcat, the ranks of people like David Commandeer or Nathan Wolf, people that make sticks on a regular and constant streaming basis. If I were saying that I was a maker, I would be putting myself in the ranks of them, and I don't consider myself near the caliber of them. I can make some decent sticks that look pretty good. I made these.
Are there different links for age groups?
Yeah, some people, even grown-ups like shorter sticks sometimes. So there's variation on that. I'm actually going to get into that since we've got about 20 minutes left. I'm going to talk a little bit about the stickball sticks and how they're made and the style that they're made and all that kind of stuff. So while we're at it, let's get after it then. Right here is your basic run-of-the-mill Oklahoma standard for Cherokee ball sticks. There's some subtle variation on this. They might have a little bit wider cup. They might bell out a little bit. They might be thicker or have a heavier shoulder to them. But for the most part, Oklahoma Cherokee sticks look basically like this. They are a stave that's been shaved down, sometimes with a draw knife, sometimes with a rasp. And then it's got a thin strip down at the end that you either turn that whenever you first cut them hickories, or you turn it after you let it set, but you're going to have to boil it then. You boil it, it'll break down the bond of that wood, and then you can turn it real easy. Once you've got it turned and you tighten it down with something to hold it in place, a lot of times they just tie wire around it for a little bit, and it'll hold that shape. Hickory is really resilient that way. So hickory is probably the most common used wood when it comes to ball sticks. Some people use other kinds. A lot of people will like bodark, especially people that are experienced in bow making. They get to liking bodark because it's so tough, and they'll utilize bodark. Bodark is going to be a tighter grain. It's going to be heavier, and it's going to hurt if you get hit with them, because I've been hit with them and they're no fun. Nah. And these hickories usually won't either. As little as these ones are, you can slap them together and do just about anything you want. So that's your basic Oklahoma Cherokee stick. And the what? Yeah, this is the string that's on here is actual real animal rawhide. I'm cut into thin strip, real thin strip, and then soaked in water. And then I tied them on there as tight as I could possibly get them and let them dry. And when they dry, they tighten up even more and they get real hard. And so these are hard on the inside. Whereas a lot of people these days oftentimes will just opt for your run-of-the-mill store-bought sinew, synthetic sinew that you can use for just about anything. It works really good and it lasts a little while. This right here ain't coming off. It's on there forever. It can break, but if it does, it's pretty rare. Yeah, absolutely. You can pass those to everybody else, and I'll get to flapping my gums about the other ones. So those, like I said, are your basic run-of-the-mill Oklahoma Cherokee sticks. These ones are a little bit different in shape, a little bit different in handle. These are a basic Eastern style Cherokee stick. You'll see that the part that's actually bent or shaped is in the middle, and this handle is actually two pieces that have been bent around like this and then connected in the center. A long time ago, all of our ball sticks used to be this way. Even Oklahoma Cherokees used to make them this way. I think the main purpose and the main reason that they changed that, or it changed over time, is because the hickories are not as long and slim and straight as they are back east here. Our hickories are a little crooked once they get a little ways up. So it's more difficult to find a long, short stave to make a stick like this. Now, like I said, those Eastern guys, their sticks aren't exactly the same as our ancestors, but pretty dang close. When they pick the ball up, they'll scoop it up and throw their sticks down, and then their hands are free, and then it's on like Donkey Kong, you know. They want to make sure that their buddies or the other team or whomever can't get a hold of them. But these versions are basically what they do in North Carolina. Now there are Cherokees here that have started making double-handled sticks again. I know that David Commandeer is actually one of them. He'll make even one with an Oklahoma cup on it and Eastern handles, which I think is pretty cool and probably pretty indicative of what our ancestors did. People made their own sticks at one time. Every player went out, cut his own, he did everything for himself. He made his own bow, he made his own arrows, all of that stuff. So we made our own sticks. And so I would make a pair of sticks based upon my own preference. What happened is that with our ancestors losing these traditions, with our people losing these traditions, and then just a few ball stick makers within a couple of communities, or just a few ball sticks makers here in Oklahoma, dwindles down to just a few, then that one guy teaches a bunch of people, and his sticks become the standard. That's basically what's happened with us and what's happened in North Carolina. For the variation in the game, a little bit for scooping a ball up like this, yeah. But they take it, like I said, they take it in their hand. If you were to try to throw this to pass it, it's going to get hooked in here and it goes fling straight to the ground just about.
When they scoop the ball, they got and your teammates kind of block for you like football. That's just kind of
You block for you. You can grab one of them guys that you don't like from the other team and throw him to the ground and hold him there. You don't even have to. There's no such thing as holding. So if you want to grab somebody and just throw your stick around their neck like this and fling them to the ground, you can do it. If you're on top of him and you got your stick right here and you're holding him down, you can do it. As long as you're not mad when you're doing it. You get mad, then you get switched. And that's for that. The way that they play in North Carolina.
Throwing, I noticed that you put your hands together. Those you have to cross your hands. You don't fly.
A little bit. Just these ones here are really beveled out or curved, and so some of them that way. Now, while we're at that, we can go ahead and look again at another pair. These here are Muskogee sticks, Seminole or Creek, either way. The Seminole and Creek people play stickball as well. And this version, you can see, has a really heavy shoulder on it. This is how we know that at one time we had the double handle. Because this heavy shoulder on it, if we were just to continue that all the way down, it would be the exact same thing as those sticks over there, except for a little tighter cup is all. The Creeks still play that east-west ball game at their ceremonial grounds, and there's sometimes a couple of hundred guys out there. There's a lot of them. There's little to no rules aside from purposely trying to hurt somebody with your sticks. You can do just about anything you want. No boundaries. I remember a friend of mine telling me about one of the ceremonial games. There was a car parked over next to the field, a little Honda with a sunroof, and that ball went into the sunroof, and all you saw was creek butts hanging out of that car, trying to pull that car apart, just going after. They weren't being nice about it. And they broke some things on that car. Broke one of the mirrors off, and broke one of that bug deflector that goes over the sunroof. Broke that off of there. So they were still going after it. But these are really heavy. I've used these in that tournament style game against those Choctaws, and I've broken other people's sticks with these. If there's a bunch of guys down on the ground digging for that ball, and then you come over the top of them, you got big heavy sticks like this, and just knock every one of their sticks out of their hands and get the ball and get gone. But if you hit somebody with them, they're going to know it, and they might. So you got to, in the midst of playing, got to make sure that you're not doing anything on purpose. But you come down over the top of them. I broke a guy's sticks one time. The very same guy that actually clipped me in the eye and split my eye open. It was not related to it whatsoever. He did that later on, I think, with another pair of sticks, and it wasn't on purpose. I watched him. He was just following through when he was throwing the ball, but he hit me right in the face. So anyway, yeah, you can pass those around, and everybody can get an idea of what those. These are all my personal sticks, by the way, so don't be sticking them in your pockets. One last pair. This pair here is probably the most innovative. And what I mean by that is that, like I said, at one time, we used to have that double handle. All of us in the Southeast had that double handle that went all the way down. Well, these are the Choctaw sticks. And you can see there's some pretty subtle differences, pretty different differences, I guess you'd say. They have square handles. That's the first thing that you might notice right offhand. Second, and the reason being is that way them sticks can lay right on top of each other, real flat. Usually one cup is a little bit bigger than the other cup, and they're beveled in quite a bit. And it makes for a spectacular stick, I can't lie. As much as I would like to claim this was Cherokee, it ain't. It's Choctaw, and it makes a really cool stick. They don't have to look at their sticks whenever they're snapping them together, because they fit right perfect like that. They don't have to pay attention to anything, and oftentimes they'll catch the ball and be in dead run and still keep going, or they'll snatch it up off the ground and keep going without even really looking at it. And that's because they know that if they're pretty close to that ball, that it's going to get trapped in there and it ain't going nowhere. You can use anything you want. They're with each different tribe and each different group, there's going to be variation on the style, but for the most part, these are the standards that I brought today, was for you guys to see, was these basic standards. These Choctaw sticks are phenomenal for throwing and catching and moving that ball up and down the field. It's a very, very fast-paced, quick game. And so with the passing that's involved, that ball moves from one end of the field all the way to the other end. Another guy catch it and send it right back. Another guy catch it, send it right back sometimes. And then on top of that, then they're down on the ground and digging for it and all of those kinds of things. And just about anybody gets a hold of you. It's usually not fun.
How do y'all prepare for the tournament? Scrimmage one another? Or?
There's the team that's up and running right now called Ani Sonoy Nighthawks. That's what that means. They play each other, scrimmage each other on a regular basis, and they're always playing other teams from other communities. They're always playing the Choctaws down in Tuskahoma, or they're always playing Sixtown from around Oklahoma City way. So there's a few teams spread it out within Oklahoma, and then there's a whole bunch of them in Mississippi. And then on top of that, there are Eastern Band Cherokees that play in North Carolina. Now the game's going to be a little bit different on each one of those, but for the most part, yeah, that's what they do. They play against all those other teams and amongst themselves on a regular basis. And that way, and even playing the social game is good training for that other game. Just to get agility and speed and quickness, throwing and catching, all that kind of stuff. It all kind of gels and works together. But yeah, so they practice quite a bit. I think 2 or 3 times a month at least. And at that point, and during the summer months, they probably play. Probably 6 or 8 different tournaments, maybe more, throughout the summer.
How old is the oldest participant we know?
If you go to either, he's ready. Shoot. Yeah, he patted him on the back like, yeah. I see you eyeballing me in it. Let's get out there. No, the oldest participant. I don't know exactly the oldest participant, but I can tell you that the second chief of the Choctaws in Tuskahoma, the deputy chief of their tribe, he's an older dude and he plays. Now, in Mississippi and in North Carolina, both, they have games or tournaments where they have certain age limits, age and older. So, like, I think there's 35 and older that plays in Mississippi and in North Carolina. And so, if you're 35, you're considered a young guy. I don't know. And then so on. So, but that don't mean nothing. Some of them guys have been playing their whole lives, and they could stretch one of them young boys out, and he'll wonder what happened. I know if I got out there with my dad, I'd be scared of him, and he's shorter than I am. So.
Yeah, we just have a couple of minutes. Do you want to talk about anything else?
Yeah, let me see the ball real quick. I was planning on showing that a little bit. This one's seen better days. It's about spent, to be honest with you. And a student made it, and that's probably why I haven't gotten rid of it, because it was a student that made it. It was her first time making a ball, and it was pretty cool that she made one and gave it to me. So I didn't want to get rid of it. But anyways, the basic ball is about the size of a golf ball. There are some variations. It doesn't have to be. The tournament style, they do play with a kind of a regulation ball that's exactly the same size as this. The only difference is that it's made with some sort of non-traditional rubber underneath, and then leather is woven around it. Kind of looks like a basket design almost around it, and that came from the Mississippi Choctaws and that tournament game. So. Yeah, you can use a golf ball if you do. I know somebody that made one and stitched leather around that. If you get hit with that, it really hurts. There was a girl at one time we ran at. They lost several stickball balls in the woods when we were playing one time, and so I made a makeshift one out of some duct tape and a hickory nut. And another girl that was playing a social game, and another girl reared back to throw the ball like this and flung it as hard as she could. And she was a really good softball player. And she hit another girl in the face right here and blacked both her eyes immediately. She hit her like this. She went down, and as soon as she came back up, her eyes were black. It was that quick. But yeah, that's your basic standard. There's some smaller, some a little bit bigger, but
What's that made out of on the inside?
this one here is traditionally. Traditionally, our ancestors would have put either a rock or a hickory nut or a walnut or a buckeye on the inside sometimes. They would find something along those lines, something to give it a little weight, and then they would stuff or wrap deer hair, just scraped off the hide, on the inside of it. That was what they stuffed it with, and then they would stitch up that buckskin around it. Sometimes they had this X design right here where they stitched it up like this. Sometimes they have one that just goes around in a circle. There's a couple of variations on that, but basically it looks like a little baseball. And they do have some that actually had oval shapes at each end and actually had that leather pattern just like a baseball does. Some people make them that way. But anyways, that's your basic standard.
What are we making out of today?
Today, most people, when they make some, they use either yarn or twine or something along those lines to wrap around whatever they're stuffing it with to give it weight. So if they've got a hickory nut in there, or if they've got a rock in there, they wrap that yarn or twine around it until they get it a round shape, and then they stitch up that leather around the outside of it.
A lot of those balls you buy, the inside of them are hard.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I've known people that have taken the guts out of a baseball and used that inner part, that hard inner shell out of it. And if it's got enough stuffing in there, it won't be so bad if you get hit with it. But now, when them guys are shooting, when they're playing that tournament game and they're shooting against that pole, there's usually a big guy standing there with sticks like this. When he's got his sticks up trying to block that pole that's about this wide, right? And he's standing right here. Them guys come in and try to shoot, they're hitting him. They're hitting him anywhere. Hitting him in the face, hitting him in the belly, wherever. And so they probably come out of here with red marks all over them. But nah, everybody prides themselves on the fact that that we don't use any protective gear. I've seen a few guys who wear mouthpieces. That's just because they want to lose their teeth. But if you go to North Carolina and play amongst those Cherokees, they will not allow you to do that. You're not allowed to do any of that. The only thing you wear out there is a pair of shorts, and that's it. Whereas, what's that? Or a loincloth. She's not kidding. There's actually a community over there that started playing again traditionally in loincloth, and they come from Snowbird community in North Carolina, and it's a community that has a lot of speakers, and they actually speak Cherokee a lot like the speakers here in Oklahoma do. So they have that same dialect, but their young men have started wearing breechcloths when they play, rather than wearing shorts.
We just have a couple of minutes, so you want to ask questions?
You guys, in most cases, just about any time I do any kind of presentation, you guys are allowed to ask any questions you want. Usually with little kids, I tell them, don't ask me why the sky is blue or water's wet or anything like that. Just Cherokee stuff. Yeah, but y'all can ask me anything you want to ask about anything. It can be about ball game, it can be about ceremonies, it doesn't matter. I don't care. I like to talk about Cherokee stuff, so it's all up to y'all. Any other questions? Well, during the holidays is the easiest time to catch a game because there's one scheduled every year. But that team, Ani Sonoy, is constantly playing in tournaments. And I have a big feeling that Cherokee Nation is going to start backing them in a strong way here shortly. And when they do that, there's going to be a lot of publications about them going to play somewhere or something along those lines, so you guys will know. They played at the Jim Thorpe Games, traditional Native Games deal, and had a tournament down there recently, stuff like that. So it's going to be out there, and you'll get your chance, I promise.
What was the name?
Anisinoy, it means Nighthawks. Nighthawks is that's in reference to our traditional people that came about during Redbird Smith's era.
And once upon a time, the Heritage Center used to do stick making. Do they still do that?
On occasion, they have classes over there. I know that here pretty soon, probably I will wager, within the next 4 or 5 months, there's going to be classes here that Cherokee Nation is going to offer. And hopefully we can get, hopefully they don't make me do it by myself. Eddie, hopefully they can get some of these guys that make them all the time, and they can all be there and working together and teach a bunch of people to play. It's not an easy process. You got to go, if you start to finish, you would go and you would cut a hickory log at least about this big. You would split it all the way down and cut it and quarter it into staves. Once you've split it that far, you would take the bark off of it, shave one end of it down. Like I said, matrilineal. So they would turn that stick and bind it to it like that, and it'll hold its shape. And they shave it down either with a draw knife or with a rasp. And if you're lucky, you can cut your staves out with a table saw and use modern day technology. A lot of people go, modern technology. I'm going to cut my tree down with an axe, with a wooden axe. And a stone axe, a stone-tipped axe. Yeah, okay, if you want to. But our ancestors, if they had chainsaws, they had took it down. And so they'll have modern tools as well. Not just, but there is something to be said about making at least one pair of sticks, at least with just handheld tools all the way through. If you can do that, it might teach, especially for young people, it teaches them something about themselves. And it helps to teach them to, if you start something, you should finish it. You should go all the way into the end of it. So,
You say minimum of 12?
minimum of 12 per team. Now that, the ceremonial, Cherokee ceremonial game, you're not probably going to catch very many of those games publicized. In fact, it probably won't ever be publicized. There will probably only be a few Cherokee ceremonial grounds that participate in that, and that's okay. But it's ours, and we're going to perpetuate it anyways. So hopefully that ceremonial version of it that has songs and medicine and dances and all those things is going to really take shape and move in the future. Because it was alive. It was something that we used for ourselves, for our young people, and I think our young people need it. We would probably have a lot less problems with gangs, drugs, and alcoholism and teenage pregnancy and all these other things if our young men would learn how to act. And so this ball game is going to be, I think, something that all of our communities need. Yes, yeah. I mean, they have that. Those young men, they have that. They need that. They need that outlet, and they don't have it. They don't have an outlet. Yes, we need them. We need them. Yeah, absolutely. Well. Haba, wadon na garawa. Gayalili chase. Thank you. I'll do even more so whenever I get to spend time with them in California.